Imagine a world where your doctor prescribes cocaine for a toothache, where people drank radioactive water for energy, and where furniture had to be covered up to avoid causing impure thoughts. No, this isn't a fantasy novel or a horror movie. This was the real world of the 19th century. Get ready, because today we're re-diving into some of the most shocking and absurd things our not-so-distant ancestors actually believed. Let's start with the most terrifying category: medicine. If you got sick in the 1800s, the cure could be far worse than the disease. Take cocaine, for example. Today it's a controlled substance, but back then, it was the go-to remedy for everything. Got a cough? Have some cocaine drops. Feeling a bit down? A cocaine-laced tonic will cheer you right up. There was even a wildly popular product called Vin Mariani, a wine infused with cocaine endorsed by popes, queens, and famous authors. They claimed it restored health and vitality. Can you imagine? But if cocaine wasn't your style, perhaps you'd prefer something with a little glow. After Marie Curie discovered radium, the world went crazy for it. This highly radioactive element was marketed as a miracle cure-all. People drank radioactive water from special jugs, used radium-infused face creams to get a youthful glow, and even ate radium pills for rejuvenation. There were radium chocolates, radium suppositories, and even radium toys for children. Of course, nobody knew it was slowly poisoning them from the inside out. And let's not forget the old classics. Practices like bloodletting and purging were still common. The idea was to balance the body's humors by getting rid of bad blood or clearing out your system. Doctors would use leeches or cut a vein to drain blood, often weakening patients until they could no longer fight their illness. It's a miracle anyone survived a trip to the doctor. On top of all this, the market was flooded with patent medicines. These were secret formulas, often just alcohol, opium, or mercury mixed with flavored syrup, that promised to cure cancer, tuberculosis, and everything in between. They were essentially snake oil, creating addictions and poisoning countless people who were just desperate for a cure. Now let's move from the body to the mind. Ever heard of phrenology? It was the science of reading a person's character, intelligence, and even criminal tendencies by feeling the bumps on their skull. Phrenologists had detailed maps of the head, linking every lump and curve to a specific personality trait. People took this incredibly seriously. Employers would consult phrenologists before hiring someone, and you might even get your head read before choosing a spouse. It was like a personality test, but with more head patting. Speaking of things you can't see, let's talk about spiritualism. In the second half of the 19th century, many people became convinced they could talk to the dead. Seances were all the rage, especially among the upper classes. Families would gather in darkened rooms, holding hands around a table, waiting for a sign from the great beyond. They'd hear mysterious knocks, see tables levitate, and receive messages from departed loved ones through a medium. While many mediums were later exposed as frauds using clever tricks, for a time, a huge part of society truly believed they were communicating with spirits. The belief in invisible forces didn't stop with ghosts. For decades, scientists were certain that the entire universe was filled with an invisible substance called the luminiferous ether. They thought light needed something to travel through, just like sound travels through air. It was the only explanation they had. It wasn't until the famous Michelson-Morley experiment in 1887 that the cracks in this theory began to show, paving the way for Einstein and our modern understanding of physics. Another invisible threat people feared was miasma, or bad air. Before germ theory was widely accepted, most people believed diseases like cholera and the plague were caused by foul-smelling vapors rising from swamps, sewage, and decaying matter. To protect themselves, they'd avoid smelly areas and carry around scented handkerchiefs. While cleaning up filth did coincidentally help reduce disease, they were fighting the wrong enemy. It took pioneers like Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch to prove that tiny, invisible microbes were the real culprits. And what about flight? Today we hop on planes without a second thought, but in the 19th century, the idea of a heavier-than-air machine flying was considered a joke. Respected scientists, including the famous Lord Kelvin, declared that it was physically impossible. Flying was a dream for madmen and fantasists, right up until the Wright brothers proved them all wrong in 1903. The absurdity of the era wasn't just limited to science and medicine, it bled into everyday life, especially when it came to morality. The Victorians were so obsessed with propriety that it bordered on the ridiculous. They were so prudish that even the legs of a piano or a table were considered too suggestive and had to be covered with little skirts, lest they provoke improper thoughts. Yes, furniture legs were seen as scandalous. This obsession with decency was particularly hard on women. Any emotional or psychological issue a woman experienced, from anxiety and irritability to just having a strong opinion, was often diagnosed as hysteria. The term was a catch-all for anything that made a woman difficult. The prescribed treatments were even more bizarre, ranging from bland diets and forced bed rest to, in some cases, a pelvic massage performed by a doctor to induce a hysterical paroxysm. It was a shocking way to pathologize and control women's behavior and even their sexuality. Looking back, it's easy to laugh or be horrified by these beliefs. From drinking radium to covering up piano legs, it all seems completely insane. But it raises a fascinating question. What are we doing and believing right now that will seem just as crazy to people 100 years in the future? What parts of our modern medicine, science, or culture will be the subject of a video like this in the year 2124? So which of these 19th century beliefs blew your mind the most? And what do you think future generations will find absurd about our lives today? Let me know down in the comments. If you enjoyed this trip back in time, please give this video a like and subscribe for more mind-blowing journeys through history. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.